get a good roof over their heads. And then the last thing I think we all need to think about is empowering unions again. Too many people are working jobs that used to be unionized, that used to earn a really strong living wage, and they're working those same jobs as contractors. This is a quote-unquote gig economy, where folks are expected to get scraps of the kinds of jobs that used to exist. And the only way we address that is by empowering unions again, and that's why the work that you do is so critical.
How do we raise wages in Michigan? Well, we do it through a couple of different ways. Number one, we raise the minimum wage. You know, there was an effort to raise the minimum wage to $15. The Republicans saw their opportunity to undermine an effort they didn't want to see on the ballot because they knew it would turn out Democrats. And so they quickly harnessed 13 and tried to undercut the effort. When they did that, I took that opportunity to negotiate a cost of living increase. And so on the 1st of this month, the minimum wage jumped up again for the 5th time in a row. And so it's a little bit better in Michigan, but it is not good enough. We do need a $15 an hour minimum wage in Michigan. But we also have to make sure that every Michigander has a path to a high wage job. That means we got to fix our education system so everyone's coming out prepared. So that when they graduate, they are either on a path to a skilled trade, or to a free community college degree, or to a 4-year degree that you can use that same two-year commitment for community college to pay towards, so that we don't accumulate nearly as much debt that is an all-out barrier for people. When there is a higher concentration of skills, that's what increases all of our standard of living. That's what's going on in Minnesota. That's what will make Michigan a place that the Amazons of the world will take seriously when we have a high concentration of talent. And the third thing, we got to protect collective bargaining in Michigan. Those are the 3 steps to how we raise wages in this state.
Bill?
So I'm a little more mature than everybody else on this stage. I remember a time when my dad working in the shop, somebody working in a factory could afford to have 2 cars in the driveway. Some of them can actually afford to have a boat in a summer place. That doesn't exist anymore. So as governor, the thing that I've said is we're going to work on this minimum wage issue. We're going to get it to $15, but we're going to do it in a creative way. For the last 60 days, I've had people working on ballot proposals. Because people have asked the question, how do you get anything done if the legislature remains controlled by the Republicans? Well, the next governor of the state's got to be smart enough to recognize that if you want to get something done, you start now. So I've been working on ballot proposals that we can get on the ballot for the fall, so that as the next governor, I can hit the ground running. One of those ballot proposals is around minimum wage. We can't take the minimum wage up to $15 overnight. Not going to work. All we're going to do is put people out of jobs. But in this state, we have a welfare to work program. What I'm proposing is that we move the minimum wage up to $10 an hour. We use the welfare to work program to subsidize that, so that we're giving people $5 out of the welfare to work program, so they're actually achieving $15 an hour. Over the next 5 years, we will boost the minimum wage up $1 every year, reduce the amount that we're taking from welfare to work, so that we get to $15 an hour. Second thing is we have an opportunity to create our very own WPA program in the state of Michigan. Anybody old enough to know what WPA is? I proposed an infrastructure program. That statewide infrastructure program is $60 billion. We'll be able to put anybody who wants to work in a job in this state for the next 25 to 30 years that'll pay a minimum of $17.50 an hour. We can't wait for corporations to do it. We got to take the initiative and do it ourselves. Those are the 2 things that I'm really focused on in lifting wages in Michigan.
I'm going to take the liberty of asking a follow-up question for all the candidates, and we'll go in the same order as we started this time, Mr. Street. I'm curious, it sounds like I heard a consensus about raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, maybe different ideas about how to get there. I'm curious, in general, though, if you support raising the tip wage for tip workers in Michigan. Just a quick, short answer here. I don't need a full response. But.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we need to raise the wage for restaurant workers. They work hard. We all know that, how hard they work. And they should be able to keep their tips.
So I was talking to the folks who were behind the one tip wage ballot initiative, and one of the points that they brought up that to me was really compelling is that when you leave people open for whether or not they do or don't get tips, it really disproportionately puts them in potential harm's way in situations where they get manipulated. There's a responsibility we have to treat tipped wages like all wages, and I support that initiative, and actually would support a $15 minimum wage for tipped workers as well.
Absolutely, unless I get accused of, talking about women's issues again. I think it's important to acknowledge that we're talking about women who are waiting tables, we're talking about people in the service sector, which are disproportionately women. I absolutely support raising the tipped wage as well.
I gave you a long answer before, short answer, yes.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Our next question is from Steve Gulick from Iron Workers Local 8.
Thank you. Stay in the same theme, what should the next governor be doing to help create more manufacturing jobs? And while doing so, how do you diversify the economy?
Thanks, Steve. I think Abdul's going first this time.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Michigan has always been and will remain the U.S.'s hub for manufacturing work, and it should stay that way. The question that we have to ask ourselves is two things. Number one, how do we continue forward on industries that are new, that we may not be embracing yet? So to me, where there are tremendous opportunities is thinking about renewable manufacturing, thinking about manufacturing electric vehicles and new mobility design, manufacturing with respect to where manufacturing touches infrastructure. As we think about this new mobility future, we know that the infrastructure work is going to take a substantial proportion of manufactured parts. And how do we make sure that we are leaders in R&D and therefore also leaders in manufacturing on these new forward-thinking kinds of industries? And then the second question for us is, how do we make sure that as we manufacture, we're not watching these manufacturing jobs turn into robots who do those jobs? And that, for us, means that we're going to have to, number one, empower unions, but number two, think about how it is that we're upskilling manufacturing workers to be able to have those kinds of jobs. Because if you go through any 21st century manufacturing unit and you tour them, you see that there have to be highly skilled laborers alongside these really, really highly technical machines. And we have not done the investment that we need to be able to empower our workforce to go on and be leaders in doing this. And so we're losing a lot of the competition because our workforce is not where it needs to be the future of that. And so these issues, the automation and forward thinking about new technologies and new manufacturing opportunities, I think has to frame this conversation, which means that for us, it really has to be about how do we do two things right. Number one, invest in making this, again, the research and development hub of the United States. And number two, how do we make sure that we're investing in both K through 12 and then also 1- and 2-year, even 4-year opportunities to really empower our people to be able to be the leaders in manufacturing and be able to take up these jobs.
Thanks, Gretchen.
All right, so last night, before the governor's state of the state, I held what I called the real state of our state. And I had 8 different people come from all different parts of the state to talk about their real state of the state. The fact of the matter is, Michigan has the finest workforce on the planet. We just need a level playing field to show it. We need to make sure that we are investing in ourselves. We've got the Republicans who've been in control for a long time in Lansing. And they continue to give tax breaks to their friends and take investment out of our people, out of our infrastructure. And we've got a city full of families that still doesn't trust the water coming out of their tap and who can blame them. But there are other communities that are in such a precarious position, they may find themselves in the same spot soon. We need a governor who's ready to invest in the people of this state. This is our state. We have everything from it's necessary that we do everything from rebuilding our roads, to rebuilding the pipes underneath the ground, to ensuring that everyone in the state has access to broadband. That's how we make this the state that people want to invest in again, that people want to move to. Our manufacturing, we are doing things in autonomous vehicles, but advanced manufacturing requires a set of skills, and that's exactly what Amazon pointed to when they chose not to come here. We've got to give everyone a path to a high-wage skill. We own manufacturing in Michigan. We need a governor who recognizes that, who invests in our workers, and is going to say, we are open for business. This governor could be throwing a shovel in the ground every week if he harnessed the talent that's here and fought for the people of this state. That's what we're going to do when we win this election.
Thanks, Bill.
So manufacturing in Michigan and all of this country is evolving. We're moving from being a labor-intensive manufacturing environment to one that is automated. Now, that doesn't mean that employment opportunities are going to go away. What it does mean is that they're going to change. And the way that we're going to accommodate those changes is by making sure that we're providing the kind of educational opportunities for our folks so that they're evolving with it. You know, right now, I grew up at a time when in high schools and junior high schools, you had shop classes, you had vocational training. I've said as the next governor of this state, I'm going to return vocational training to every single high school and every school district in this state. Because every single year, we have thousands of well-paid jobs that go unfilled because we don't have young people to do it. We've got to make sure that we're doing the right things. Right now, we're not doing those things, and we can't. Secondly, we have got to recognize that the learning process is ongoing. It doesn't stop. It doesn't stop when you finish high school. It doesn't stop when you go get that job. Things change, so we got to make sure that we're creating an environment where people can learn new things, embrace them, and be a part of the change instead of being left on the curb. That's what's happening today. And one of the things I want to do as the next governor is to develop a labor council made up of the top employers in the state so that we come together and develop a training strategy that we can deploy so that we don't leave people behind because they don't have the training and skills to do the new jobs.
Thanks, Bill. Sheree?
Well, I'm an immigrant. I immigrated to the United States some 40 years ago. When I got on the plane, I had about $20 in my pocket and a dream. When I landed in New York, I had $16 as I had a couple of beers on the plane. But, you know, I'm a PhD chemist. That's what I got my degree. And it's good for our leaders to, often I get asked, what is my political experience? Have I been a mayor before or done anything? And sometimes I wonder if our politicians ever get asked, do they understand science? And it's kind of important for our politicians to understand things like climate change and things like renewable energy. And what I want to do is take our manufacturing to the next level. That means as a scientist, as an innovator, I want to welcome new technology. I think we have to adopt new technology. We have to adopt it to specialized manufacturing. And having run small businesses, I'm going to create a pro-small business. Small business is the one that creates most of our jobs. So I'll be a pro-small business, pro-entrepreneurship, and pro-startup governor. And I will bring and prosperity through helping small businesses create jobs, helping small manufacturers create jobs. I won't be making trips to Japan and China like Snyder has done to give them hundreds of billions of dollars of incentives. I think we need to help small manufacturing companies here in Michigan. That's what I do.
Thanks, Sheree. Our next question is going to go to Rick Bruce with IBEW Local 58.
Thank you. What role, if any, do you believe business tax incentives should play in job creation? Now, I heard a couple of you tickle on the surface of that. Could you drill down and give us a little policy?
Business tax incentives. So, when I was in the House, I was the top Democrat on the budget. I ran all the budgets for Jennifer Granholm, and here's what I know about the state budget. The side that we all depend on, whether it's your kids' education, or it's the police that show up when you need them, or it's, you know, everything from prisons to our Medicaid budget is on the general fund. That's $50 billion a year. The side of the equation that no one talks about actually is bigger than that. Those are the tax breaks that we give to business in Michigan. They don't have to come before the legislature every year and justify that, like our teachers do in terms of what we pay on our kids' schools. And that's why, that's exactly where I went to in order to pay for my college plan that I created when I was in the Senate. But here's what I know. Our tax policy, when we are trying to lure business investment into Michigan or to do something, has to be driven by two fundamental questions. I said two like this. Two fundamental questions. One is, what does it create jobs? Or two, does it create an investment that's important? Before we give anyone money to proceed on some sort of a building or investment, we've got to ask those two questions. And if they don't get special treatment under the tax code when I'm governor. I'm thinking about things like brownfield redevelopment. This governor got rid of that. We don't have a lot of people that are redeveloping brownfields and getting them back into a healthy status, but also into a usable status that's producing something. Because this governor doesn't believe in it. I do. And I know that that's good public policy, but also that it creates jobs. Same with historical building credits. But I am opposed to just giveaways. This governor has shown he just gives incentives to his friends, not based on how many jobs they create or what it means in terms of investment. And I think that's foolish. It sends a bad message to the business community, and it depletes resources for the people who need it most. And that's investments like our roads and our schools and making sure that we've got skills, we've got good paying jobs in Michigan.
Bill?
If you grew up in Detroit or around Detroit, raise your hand. So, we have a new brownfields bill that was enacted last year. Dan Gilbert is going to build a complex in downtown Detroit using that brownfields bill on the old Hudson site. The Hudson site was not a brownfield. That developer will ultimately end up pocketing almost $1 billion of taxpayer money for his enterprise. As the next governor of the state, I've said that we're not going to do any more of these corporate welfare deals. We're going to make sure that when people come to us and ask for tax breaks and tax incentives, there are really benefits that are going to endure to the working community and to the neighborhoods, because that's not happening right now. You know, when Illich decided to build the new Red Wings Stadium, there was supposed to be a set-aside for employment. Didn't happen. The penalty associated with that was so small that the developer said, rather than train these people, I'll just pay the penalty. We got to stop that kind of legislation from passing through Lansing. As the next governor of this state, I can guarantee you that I'm going to do something that we haven't had a governor do in decades. I will refuse to sign legislation that comes to my desk that is about giving a billionaire or a big corporation your tax dollars and not giving you something back. If they want tax incentives, if they want tax breaks, they got to be creating real jobs that we can measure and that will do something to support the community. Thank you.
Well, you know, we've seen corporate giveaways. I mean, corporations are making plenty of profits. Their profits are soaring. And we've seen in the Granholm administration, tax incentives were given that we're still paying for it. And I believe we'll have another $800 million of incentives we owe from the Granholm era, and another $1.2 billion from the incentives given by Snyder. Now what happens here is that these incentives are given, the companies come here, set up a shop, and you know what, our politicians then get that photo up, and you see the thing and starting a business. A few years later, these businesses shut down. No one hears about them. And if you look at in the last 10 years, the net gain of jobs is essentially zero. And we as a state have gotten not much for those hundreds of millions of dollars of tax incentive that we're given. I want to make sure the corporations pay their fair share of taxes. And I will bring about a graduated tax structure. So anyone making, say, $160,000 or more will have to have a graduated tax structure so that the rich and the ultra-rich and corporations will pay their fair share. But I think it's time for us to take those incentives that we have given away to big corporations and start investing in smaller businesses here in Michigan.
Thanks, Rick. Abdul?
Right now, we're between two visions for Michigan. One we heard articulated yesterday at the State of the State address, if you were able to stay awake for it. The other is not that way. The other is where, rather than continuing to subsidize huge corporations who come here, and then proceed to offshore or automate the jobs that they promised, instead of doing that, we invest in the only thing that has ever really created a job, which is a person with an idea and the infrastructure and the means to move themselves, their ideas, their goods and services around. Right now, we pay $1 billion in corporate subsidies, $1 billion a year. That $1 billion, you could imagine where it could be invested. We have a school system that is the first in the entire country as a state to have suffered a decline in proficiency scores. We have 29% of our roads and 37% of our bridges that don't meet basic competency criteria. And people don't want to come to this state because we don't have the kind of human capital, as they call it, but people who have been fully 100% trained in the way that a state should, and they feel like the infrastructure that they're using here is not worthy of their investment. And so you talk to an Amazon and they say, well, you know what, Detroit is all good. You can cut taxes as much as you want. I don't even want to come because I don't believe in the infrastructure of the people I'm coming to invest in. Now, I believe in Michigan's people, and I believe that if we give them the chance, if we invest in them as they're young and throughout the life course, if we're willing to invest in the kind of infrastructure that we deserve, that this becomes the kind of place that naturally builds the kind of organic jobs and the kind of organic businesses that we can thrive on. It will attract talent, it will attract businesses simply because people want to be a part of it. That's the vision we have to invest in. It's a 50-year vision, but it's going to have to take us putting the brakes on the old and starting anew.
Is Charlie here from Unite Here Local 24? The next question is yours. There you are.
Hi. What should the next governor do to fight sexual harassment in workplace?
Bill, I think you're first on this one.
So we have a constitution, a state constitution. That state constitution says that all political power is in the hands of the people. That government is for the equal benefit, security, and protection of everyone. As the next governor of this state, I intend to make sure that we're living up to what that first line of our Constitution says. You know, right now, it's not a question of whether the laws are there, it's a question of whether we're enforcing them. If we learned anything from the Larry Nassar debacle, what we learned is that people didn't do their jobs. I believe that the most important thing the next governor of the state can do is to make sure that accountability is driven from the top down. I'm not going to be the governor that stands in front of you and say, I didn't know, or it wasn't my fault, or nobody told me. I'm going to be engaged, and I'm going to know what's happening, and I'm going to work with our next Attorney General to make sure that that person is getting the job done. Because the Attorney General's job is to be people's voice when it comes to the law. That's not happening now. I can guarantee you that we'll fix it.
Thanks, Bill. Sri?
I was coming here and I just read that Larry Nassar got somewhere between 40 and 170.
140 to 175.
175 years, and that made my day. That was a horrible, horrible situation that happened on the campus of MSU. And I have called that MSU President Simon should resign, and I have called that the entire board of trustees of MSU must resign. We have lost confidence in them and in the atrocities that have happened. We have seen that the board had the audacity and insensitivity of giving a raise to President Simon and defending her. And this whole issue about that started in the 90s and had complaints to the Ingham County Prosecutor's Office in 2014. All of this been not dealt with. Basically, you see a lot of insensitivity and people not doing their jobs and not taking responsibility. And I'm appalled to see someone like MSC President Simon still in her job, and after what has happened, all the things that have happened. So as a governor, I will start with my actions. What we have seen with Trump and his leadership and his tweets, when your leader doesn't live a life of integrity, then what you see is a culture. And I would start with the governor's office in insisting that we create a safe workplace for everyone.
Thank you. About 8 weeks ago, my wife Sarah and I welcomed a new baby girl home. And every night I go home and I'm looking into her eyes, and my goal at some point is to be able to look her in the eyes and honestly, from my heart, tell her that as a woman of color in this country, that she can do anything she puts her mind to. And if this Me Too moment showed us anything, it's that it's all of the culture of toxic masculinity that has allowed men to get away with things, sometimes a snide remark and sometimes forcing people who they have power over to do things they don't want to do. And this moment right now has to ask all of us what we're willing to do to empower a culture of equity, and what we're willing to do to actually turn that culture of equity into laws and policies on the books. Unfortunately, too many women in our society, they're held back because we don't have the kinds of policies on the books that allow them to be empowered through things like childbirth, which women uniquely can do. Whether that's something like paid family leave, or that's making sure that no employer can ask a woman about her previous earnings so that they can dock her earnings relative to a male counterpart. These are the kinds of things we need to do to be able to protect women. And then lastly, I'll say that we need more women in leadership. When women lead together. They create the kinds of places where all of us can work together in an equitable environment. I've made the commitment that more than 50% of my cabinet will be women. And that's because I know that when women lead, we are a more equitable workplace.
Thanks, Bill. Gretchen?
Well, that's a lovely way to segue into me speaking. I just want to say, for all the women who've said Me Too, so in hopes that our daughters don't have to, in hopes that we raise the bar, the expectations, and the reality for women in workplaces all across this country. I don't know how many women here want to show if you had to say Me Too because you've had sexual harassment in the workplace, but if you do, I'd like to see you showing a few. Some maybe don't feel comfortable sharing it, and that's okay. I raised my voice and said Me Too because it was during a debate where my colleagues didn't even want to have a hearing and listen to women about an issue that affected our ability to get health care in Michigan. I said Me Too because I know how important it is to support other women in coming forward, and watching one person after another recount the details of abuse by this doctor at Michigan State was hard to watch. I couldn't watch it all. It was that real and raw. But I applaud them for coming forward, and I applaud you for asking the question, because this has got to be a priority for the next governor. It means an executive order on day one on sexual assault, sexual harassment in the workplace. It means holding anyone who contracts with the state of Michigan to that same standard. It means exemplifying the kind of conduct that we are going to demand from others, and empowering women in the workplace so they have a process they can go through when they confront a problem in the workplace, and believing women when they do have the courage to come forward. I think this is an issue. We are in the midst of a culture change in this country, and we need to continue to lead that. This last year, we led a resistance. Now it's time to lead this country and to move it forward for all men and women in the workplace.
Thanks, Gretchen. Next, we're going to go to